hey, I may post this one out of order because I'm going to try to capitalize on the momentum of being one of the few people that is posting content about burncycle. And that seems selfish, and that seems like I'm taking advantage of the situation. And you're right. Timestamp. Hi, I'm Devon, your friendly neighborhood board gamer, and this is Devon Talks Tabletop, a YouTube series where the games are made up and what I say doesn't matter. I'm going to be talking about burncycle, and I know what you're saying. You're saying, Devon, you have fantastic hair. Why do you cover it up in a hat? And I didn't think that that's what you were going to say. I was wholly prepared for a different question. And now that you've said that, it's just kind of thrown me for a loop. I'm a little flattered and humbled, but at the end of the day, I am just going to forge ahead and move on and pretend that you didn't ask me that question. And I'm going to go to the question that you did have that I thought that you had, which is, Devon, why are you talking about burncycle when you don't have the game in front of you? That's because Daniel from Kids Planning has it right now, and he's doing some solo games, and we're both getting to the point to where we know how to play it because we enjoy it and we want to get better at it. And it's a heavier game that's got some stuff going on. I'd say it's more accessible than Too Many Bones and Cloudspire for several reasons, but that's why I don't have the game in front of me. So what I'm going to try to do in post is put game stuff up, put pictures up, and have them nicely inset as overlay images for your benefit, to where you don't just have to look at my ugly mug the whole time. This is going to be a first impressions, where, as I've said already in previous videos, I have forgotten my structure for it. And that's okay. We're going to jump into things, and I will timestamp as appropriate to where you feel like you can jump around as needed, to where you don't have to listen to my lengthy monologues. Burncycle is the latest title from Chip Theory Games. It is a stealth. I'm going to use the term that Daniel is trying to coin, office crawler. It is a stealth dungeon office crawler based on the thematic aspect or the thematic story narrative where you are robots and humanity wiped itself out, and then robots were kind enough to bring us back to life, and they uploaded old consciousness of previous world leaders into the minds of the humans that they repopulated the earth with. And that was a bad call because we went right back to our same old ways, except this time we subjugated the robots who brought us back to life. You are the 404th resistance of the robots, and you are trying to infiltrate 3 different corporations. There's a 4th corporation that's out there as an expansion already. But there are 3 corporations in the base game, the Ocularity, Solida, and Need Chain. They all operate a little differently. They all increase threat a little differently. But for the most part, it is a structured neoprene mat-based dungeon crawler where you create the floors of those 3 corporations. So because there's 3 corporations and a max of 3 floors, there's 9 layouts in the game. There's 9 floor plans that you can create. There might be more than that in the floor plan book, and I just haven't looked. But I think for the base game setup, you just have those 9 floors because they need to be somewhat static, because otherwise you would just have a ton of floor plans that you'd have to make up. Anyways, it is a 1 to 4 player game. I think that's right, because you can play solo. Yeah, I think it's 1 to 4. Yeah. 1 to 4 player game where you have the need for both a physical interaction with the board and a digital access, not actual digital access like an app or anything, but digital access on something called the network. You operate and function in both of those spaces on your player turn before every player turn is finished, and you go to the corporation turn, in which they act in both areas or sectors. Each mission that you have could be anywhere between 1 complexity and 3 complexity, which establishes difficulty. and then you can have anywhere between 1 and 3 floors, which establishes both difficulty and length of gameplay. The 1 floor scenarios are obviously going to be shorter in overall length than the 3 floor and the 2 floor scenarios. But because they're just going to be 1 floor, that floor is going to be scaled in difficulty higher than, a 3 or 2 floor scenario, because you want more of a challenge. And typically in a 2 or 3 floor scenario, it starts to scale up as you go to where it's harder the further you get along. I think that Burncycle, if we're giving positive impressions, is the most accessible of the chip theory games that I have played. I think Too Many Bones has a lot going for it. I think it's a fantastic game. I also think Cloudspire is a fantastic game. But both of them have a certain level of nuance or depth to them that is difficult for the average person to sit down and digest on their first setting. I think they can acclimate to it well, but it's definitely a little bit of an obstacle to overcome, even with the tutorials that they have inset within the rule books. Burncycle is different because I think that you could have someone sit down with you and within just 1 or 2 rounds of observation of the other players, understand structurally what they need to do and create effective or optimal turns for themselves. They may not be fully strategic with what the whole team needs, but they can operate their bot pretty effectively with not a lot of front loading with rules. Also, with regards to the rules, another positive about the Burncycle experience is they do a format with this they did not do for Too Many Bones, and I don't think they did it for Cloudspire either, that I think is the more effective way to teach people a harder game, which is where you have 2 booklets. You have a learn to play and you have a rules reference. So the learn to play is to guide you and get you at the table. It's to get a game underway and it's to get a game finished. And it may not be perfect. You may mess up on some rules, but it is to get you through that first game. And then the rules reference is the more exhaustive full list of all of the rules that you will need to go back to and check on as you play until you get comfortable to the point to where you don't need to. I am familiar with that from Fantasy Flight games, and I think that it does an effective job of bringing someone in, allowing them to access the game in a light mode, and then refocus them as they jump back into it by giving them access to the fuller material that they then need to compare their gameplay against to make sure that it's right. So anytime you have a question, you can have the rules reference there to guide you. I would say that even more than just the learn to play and the rules reference, the learn to play booklet from Chip Theory this time has a on the rails tutorial, which they've had in Too Many Bones before, which may not have, I don't know if that was in the first edition of Too Many Bones, but it was in the rule booklet that I have for Undertow at least. It may also be in the base rule book. But that on the rails tutorial can feel sometimes very linear and confining because by nature it is, but because they have the cards that you're going to pool, they have the dice results, it allows you to see the game in action and you're kind of caretaking the AI resolution of it, and by doing so seeing all of the core gameplay loops. That is smart, and I think it will bring more people into the hobby than not, as long as there are rule books that do that. Accessibility, yes, I think it's good. Difficulty scaling, I think, is valuable because you can make it harder, you can make it easier, and that level of adjustment is inherently in video games, which is another hobby that I enjoy. It allows you to choose where you enter in on. And also, it allows you to choose where you enter in on, but it allows you to adjust on the fly. You could be the kind of person that says, hey, I want to start off easy because I'm worried. And then you realize halfway through, you're like, no, I've got the hang of this. I want to scale it up. I want to make it more of a challenge. And you can go to the standard play. Or you could be someone who says, I'm going to jump in at the expert level because I'm a chip theory fan and I have been playing their games all this time and I know what I'm doing. And you can say, whoa, like I know how they make their games, but this is something new that I have to adjust to. This is a little too unforgiving right now. I'm going to bring it back down a little bit. Whichever way you need to push your gameplay experience, you're able to do that if they have the means to allow an adjustment of difficulty. So that's another positive for me. Another aspect of the game that I appreciate is the fact that and this is something that Daniel pointed to in our live stream, is the physical game creates the atmosphere that you'd expect. You really feel like you're in those physical locations as you move around with these chips and as you move around on these neoprene mats that are connected with these doors that you'll open or that you'll unlock, with these breach points that you'll make, with these security units that are roaming. And the top-down view feels authentic in creating like a stealth-based game where observation is very crucial. I know that one person commented that they wished that they were there, but this does not have health chips like the other games do, like Too Many Bones and Cloudspire. I think that works because that would create a verticality that I think would actually take away from what I'm discussing as the atmosphere of the game. And I'm happy that wasn't the case, because it really does feel like you're down in those buildings on those floors in the corporation based off of the visual elements that you have. The production quality is typical. It's on par for chip theory games. If you're not familiar with them and this is the first time that you dive into them, it's going to be premium clay, poker chips. Or is it clay poker chips? They're poker chips, very high quality plastic poker chips. And then you have neoprene mats, which the base ones, not the floors that you put stuff on, because that would create ridged edges, which is different. But the base mat that everything's on, the player mats, the network mat, the command module mat, all of that is stitched neoprene. Really nice. You have plastic pegs that are allocated for all of your upgrades that you have. Everything that is done in a way that is familiar for people who know chip theory games, and then is exciting and luxurious for anyone who's not familiar with them at all. I would liken their production quality to Roxley, to other companies where what is in front of you feels really premium. And that's another positive. I mean, it's hard not to appreciate a game that is made so well in terms of what's on the table in front of you. That's another positive for burncycle. I would say one potential drawback for me is the network function. It's something that I might be persuaded otherwise. It's something that I could come around to, but it feels like a mechanic that was created prior to the cohesive design of the game and the connection with the theme. It feels like a design mechanic that was discovered and heavily desired to be brought into the design, and then it was worked around and incorporated, rather than something that felt organically devised while you were coming up with the game. And that's not a bad thing. I think that they did integrate it well, and it creates some interesting decision spaces for you as a player, where you're trying to figure out, what am I doing with the burn cycle on the physical mat as I interact in the physical world, and how will that be complemented or enhanced or downgraded by what I'm doing on the network at the end of my turn. And so I think that probably for me, the reason why I'm still suspect of how I'll feel regarding that element at the end of this is that it feels like a divergent or additional decision space that I'm not sure how much I'm getting out of it, because you're playing this game and I am wholly immersed in this stealth game. And maybe that's just because I don't have a lot of stealth games and I like those in video games. That's one of my favorite genres. If I could liken it to video games, one of my favorite immersive stealth sims is Dishonored and Dishonored 2. It feels like I'm playing in Dishonored. I'm playing this stealth sim. I'm trying to figure out how to navigate in there. And then all of a sudden, I have to focus on this abstract element in the game that takes me out of that and has some connection to it thematically and mechanically, but it rips me out of here and places me here. And some decisions that I make in that sim then relate to what I'm doing there in the network. And some of the rewards or punishments in the network then come back to the sim. But it feels like a disconnected space. There's some level of divide or gap between those two for me cognitively when I'm playing. And that could change after playing numerous times. Once I get into more of a rhythm, I'm not looking at rules as much, and I feel more comfortable about the flow of game, maybe I won't even think about it anymore. But just instinctually off the bat, that's what comes to mind, is that feels a little weird, and it doesn't feel like how I feel when I'm playing in the physical space. So that's maybe the only drawback I have. Other positives, massive replayability. There are so many scenarios. I did not realize there would be this many scenarios. Each corporation has quite a few that you can focus on, and they're 1 floor, 2 floor, 3 floor, 1 complexity, 2 complexity, 3 complexity. There's quite a wide variety of stuff between those 3 corporations. There's just a lot of opportunity for player expression and exploration within the confines of the game, because each scenario can be applied differently, because the other factor that I haven't mentioned yet is the number of bots you have. Every bot you have plays a little bit differently. And then on the back side of that bot card, they can function as the command module. And each player controls an agent. They control a bot who is their robot to control. But the group as a whole controls the command module. And so each robot can add their own flavor into how you resolve the core problem at play in a scenario. If you have to go to this room and do this thing, how are you going to get there? Are you going to stealthily move between rooms? Are you going to break walls until you get to that room? Are you going to skirt around security units? Are you going to confront them physically? What is your process? And each of those bots applies their skills in a different way. And so either that bot alone or that bot in combination with another one of a similar type, of a different type, creates versatility in how you approach problem solving in burncycle. So you have that already with just the bots, but then you add in all of the scenarios with all of the different, 3 corporations that are there, which means there are so many ways to apply what is in the game to your obstacles ahead of you. There's a lot of freedom and there's a lot of exploration available because of the number of bots and the number of scenarios. So versatility, variability, and game exploration, that's a positive for me. Other aspects of burncycle that I could talk about. Physical production is a win. Variability and versatility, a win. Accessibility, a win. The network, I'll decide on. The fact that they already have expansion content for it. They have a 4th corporation. They have elements that if you miss certain things like the health chips, there are other ways that you can engage in exciting physical components for the game. There's brass mags, which I don't even remember what those are. I don't even know what those miniatures are. Maybe they're the robots. Maybe. I need to look those up. I can't even remember. Burncycle first impressions, very solid game. If I had to give it a score, I think I talked about this on the live stream, I'd give it a 7.5 or an 8 out of 10, just instinctually right now. I think it's a really fun experience. I'm excited to see how much it grows for me or changes for me, evolves over the course of time as I get more stuff played. And I can't wait to keep trying it out. So 7.5, 8 out of 10 for me. Excited to see where it goes next. Yeah, that's first impressions for Burncycle. It's the newest game from Chip Theory Games. If you have any questions, let me know. If you have any comments, let me know. If you are wondering something that I did not address, just comment whatever you like and I will answer it. Even if it has nothing to do with the game, I'll answer it. And I know that some of you will take me up on that. I will report back with maybe a review down the road once I've played it more, and maybe a live gameplay here or there if there's enough interest for it. There seems to be enough interest for it based off the amount of traffic that the unboxing got and the amount of people that wanted me to play it when I was doing it on the live stream. Hope you guys have a great one, and I'll see you next time.